All right, it says we're now live. Let me just double check. Yes, we are. Yes,
Yay.
we're live.
Okay,
Hooray!
good.
Okay, so I would like to say welcome to Becca.
Thank
We've got
you.
two redheads in a room. What trouble
Right.
can it do now? Okay, so Becca is a death doula here in Oklahoma, and you've been doing that for 12 years, I believe.
Correct.
At 12 years? Yes. And you also do herbalism. You bring a lot of things all together and blend it into
Yeah,
your death doula work.
yes. I'm a
Yeah.
palmist. I do mediumship. I do healing, touch, Reiki. Yes, all of those things.
Yes. You do it all. And I met Becca, gosh, probably a few years ago now at a spirit fair because I knew your husband.
Yes.
And he told me, he goes, "Oh no, when people meet my wife, they much prefer her." And I'm like,
Oh,
"No, you're a pretty cool guy. You're all right." But no, when I met you, I was like, "Oh."
oh,
Oh,
that's so,
he's right. He is right. You have such a very calm and compassionate um energy to you that when you told me what you did, I was like, well, of course. There has to
yeah.
be. You just bring so much with you. So I know that everyone's going to feel that from you today, but you also have a wicked sense of humor. I do. I do.
I do. Again, it's part of the dark arts, is that dry wit and that we find humor in the things that most people shy away from because you
Right.
either laugh or you cry, you know.
Right.
So we like to laugh.
We do. We do. No, and I love it. And so death doula, oh my goodness, this is such a great topic. You are the last one of the day, and I'm really glad we're finishing up with this because this is something that not a lot of people really know about.
Right.
Um, and I know that there's been a lot of that there is an increasing amount of interest in it. So I want you to just like go ahead and tell everyone what it
That
is.
that is accurate. Every time I work with hospice or doctors and nurses, which is all the time, they're like, "Oh, well, what is a death doula?" Or I've heard of that, but tell me what it is exactly you do. Which, of course, then the doctors quickly understand what it is I do, and that's I work by word of mouth. I never advertise. But and hospice is a wonderful system. It is set up for people who don't have support or who have little support. So they really have filled in a gap for the last few years. But the death doulas are coming back around, and there's very different types of death doulas. I adhere more to the ancient practices of death douling. My mother was a death doula. She would
Mm.
have called herself a caregiver or a grief walker. Um, Doula wasn't a word then for anything besides birth. Um, but I remember distinctly her having conversations that the caregivers who were there in the interim did not have. She would set the tone. She called it nesting. And she would light the candles and burn the oils and have the family in. And they would all sit down and talk about these are the updates. This is how things are looking. What does, what's your idea of what this is going to look like? And let me see if I can accommodate you. What are your expectations? How can we manage those expectations? Because sometimes they're unrealistic. And have them talk to their dying loved one in the air and in the bubble of this will all end soon. What can we do to help make this process um, more comforting, more soothing, more open, because stress is triggered when there's lack of clarity, when there's lack of understanding and information. We're all more upset when we don't know what to do. So that's kind of what the doulas come in and do. They come in and tell you this is what it's going to look like and this is what it's going to feel like, and not from a medical standpoint and not necessarily from the standpoint of a caregiver either. My caregivers, I love them, but I call them my snuggly bunnies. They get in and they get very wrapped up in the human side of the individual who's dying and with the family, and they're very cuddly and they're like a second family member, where I have to come in and be almost like an entity, someone who is compassionate and understanding. I understand where they're coming from, but I have to be their due north, and I have to be like that beacon of reason when everything else gets very emotional. And that's what my form of doulaing does. I train the caregivers, I talk with the family. I actually spend about 36 hours in the home every week so that I'm with the client around the clock, setting the tone for everything. And then the caregivers take in the rest of the time. And then we have our modern doulas who do, people are like, oh, I love what you do. And, they'll tell me and I'm like, no, that's caregiver, which if you want to be a doula, you have to kind of have the type of personality where you don't get pulled into other people's emotions as easily, which as an empath, that can be really difficult. It's my challenge this life, and I'm succeeding currently. That changes day to day. How well we do always changes. But if what you're drawn to with this work and with the idea of it is to nurture someone, to hold their hand, to let them tell you how it feels, to massage their hands and rub their feet and, love them through the process. That's more of a caregiver role, where when you're here for the spiritual aspect, to let people let go, knowing where they're heading, letting the family let go in a functional way, in a way that also keeps a foot on the ground, because it's easy to get lost in the ethers and in the emotion. But I'm the stability. I keep the caregivers from losing it and the families from losing it. And, anytime my current client, I walk in, she has dementia, and she looks at me and she doesn't know what my name is, but she's like, oh, you're the one who's in charge. And I'm like, yes, I'm in charge. What can we change? What can we do? But, yeah, it's the people that are interested in it from the doula aspect. The work is a little different. And, the modern doulas know all about advanced directives and, DNRs and DNIs and ethical wills and all of these things that we can help put in play. And they're very much the more clinical aspect of dying. Like, what do you want your death to look like? And I'll make sure it makes, almost like an event planner. And it's interesting. I love watching them work because they're like, what's this death going to look like? I'll make it happen. And they make it happen, and we go off of, individual spiritual ideas. Because honestly, 31% of people die at home. And I feel like 29% of those are Catholics. I don't know why, but most of my clients are Catholic. And my form of spiritualism works well with the Catholics because I'm just woo-woo enough that they understand ritual. If I'm making a smoke circle, or if I'm spraying, a protective mist or something, they're like, I understand that, that makes sense to me. Where, they're still a little bit more worried about demons than they need to be, but, we take one thing at a time. And, I'm all about the Christ consciousness. Love is where we all originated from. It's where we all go to. It's the only thing we take with us. And they understand that. If you meet people with an open heart and they understand that you're here to love them through this process, no matter what that looks like. The spirituality issues I haven't really run into like you would think, because I'm very open about not being, a traditional Christian, that I'm pagan and that I practice pagan ways and I work with herbs and crystals and, and it hasn't scared anyone away so far.
Right. So how do you, so when you are referred by word of mouth, is it the person who's dying who is requesting you, or is it the family a lot of the time?
And it depends on the situation. Most commonly when I'm doulaing, I'm dealing with someone who is dying from disease. So they're the ones who are requesting me. When I'm dealing with someone where it's a dementia case, I'm dealing with the family. And the dementia cases for me as a spiritual worker are very different. It's a heavy caregiver home, because I'm, I can speak to their soul on a soul level occasionally, but the human aspect and calming isn't there. So it's more, I'm coaching the caregivers and the family how to deal with the loss versus the actual individual who's dying. So dementia cases tend to be heavy family, heavy caregiver involvement. When I doula for someone, the last person I doulaed for who was dying from a disease, it was just me. I didn't have caregivers there when I wasn't there. She could take care of herself well enough. And I was just doula. So it just varies. But yeah, I've never worked for anyone who doesn't know who I am. They always get my number from someone. And most of them knew my mom. You know, I can trace almost everyone back to my mom.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
So it's really, you would say, kind of really you're a bridge between
Yeah.
that person and the
Yes.
because I did a little bit of work with hospice years ago. I was doing reflexology and hospice work, and so if I went to the and it was usually oftentimes in the hospital when I was doing it, but if I went to work on that person's feet, the family would stand around the bed, like not touching the body.
Right.
And I used to joke with them, and I was like, you can touch them, you can hold their hand, they're not going to drag you through the portal.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, they can't drag you with them.
Yes. And
Um, it
yeah.
helps give them that sense of comfort that they can touch their loved one through the
Yes.
dying process.
Them, tease
Yeah.
them, talk to them, tell me stories. That's my favorite thing. Uh,
Yes.
Whenever I'm doing body work on someone, and the family is, of course, nervously standing around, like, acting like they're going to break. And I'm like, tell me your favorite story about your dad. And, and then dad will give me his side of said story and, get everyone comfortable and everyone, we've set up a society of a don't ask, don't tell when it comes to death. We've put them in homes, and I didn't go see grandpa because last time I saw him, he looked terrible. And so, they don't want to look at it. Well, now, because of the energetic shifts that we're having and the new age that we're entering, we're taking these things back because we're realizing, dude, I'm fixing to do this. I need to see how it's done. I need to see
Right.
what death looks like and what it feels like, for even from someone else's perspective. And, we criticize care facilities and nursing homes and things, but we're the ones that gave up the right to allow our family members to die in our home. And I was very fortunate. My raising was different. My grandparents died in my bed. My great grandmother, I had to move out of my bedroom every few years growing up because we took care of our dying in our home. We didn't pass it off to someone else, and we didn't look away from it. I knew how to change an adult diaper by the time I was 16 years old. And some people would look at that like, oh, that's dysfunctional. And I'm like, no, that's kind of the way it should be. We should know how to take care of a human body and allow that body to be human and allow that human to be human and get in with the nitty gritty. I've had death doulas that say, oh, the death doulas, we're hands off. And I'm like, some are. And that's your right to be. Absolutely. Whatever protections you need for yourself, but I will never be hands off. My healing touch comes through my hands, and my connection comes through, the ability to give them some of the hope and love that I carry with me, because that's why I'm a doula. It's why I do what I do.
Right. And and I would agree that that is probably why we have so much fear about dying in
Oh,
society, because we've never experienced it. We've
no,
never seen it go through it.
no.
Um, and we haven't accepted it as part of life. And it doesn't have to be just awful. My mum was a registered nurse, and she specialized in geriatrics. And so you would find that in the assisted living nursing home where she was, that when people got advanced dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that, and so when they didn't know who anyone was anymore,
Hmm.
families would stop visiting.
Yeah,
Sometimes, but they would just say, I can't come and visit my mum anymore. She doesn't
yeah,
know who I am, and it's too upsetting for me. Um, and and that's fair enough. You do what you do, but um you you lose that last phase, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. There's a
Uh,
sacredness to dying that we all miss out on
yeah,
because we don't get to see the last phases. Because even in a dementia death, there is a raising of the veil, and you do see that loved one come through at different moments. You just have to give it time. And I'm all for
yeah,
taking breaks. I tell my my caregivers all the time, I've taught them all how to ground and to do some simple breath works. And the catharsis of hand washing and making sure that their hand wash, something they have to do anyway, is a ritual. I'm like, feel the bubbles, feel your hands, pull yourself back into center, disassociate, because their feelings are not yours. You're here as an anchor to them. Allow them their chaos, because we have this romanticized idea of death because we see it in the movies, and it doesn't look that way. Sometimes the dying act terrible because they're angry and they're afraid and everything feels unjust and there's no control. So you have to be the stability in the room. You have to be the due north. Even if you take a minute and go outside and ground yourself and come back in and remember, what is your task? Your task is to help them, not do it for them. And I've
Your
seen,
advice be oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, what would your advice be for someone who's struggling with a parent or a grandparent who has dementia, Alzheimer's, who doesn't know who they are, and they're just like, I don't want to go and visit, I don't know what to do? What would be your advice for them?
Just
What
go.
would be the best?
I always recommend to go sit with them, hold their hand a minute. Even if they don't remember who you are, they're going to know that you're there. And also, when we do our spiritual workings and when we sit with ourselves and we're doing our shadow work and we allow ourselves to feel all of these uncomfortable feelings, sometimes shadow work is done in the presence of looming death. Sometimes we can sit with ourselves, and even if they don't know who we are, we can ask ourselves these questions. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I have this lack of control? Is it them that I miss, or is it the fact that, is it the unknown? And kind of work through those feelings sometimes. Granted, not all the time. I don't expect all of us to be enlightened every single day, but, really try to make it at least once or twice a week. Do something pleasant with them. Don't ask them a bunch of questions. Don't expect anything. Hope they take a nap, but sit with that energy in the room, and allow yourself to feel all of the feelings that are in the room, because what a lot of people don't realize is when a person is dying, when their soul is starting to detach, it starts to shed all of these human energies, the anger and the fear and the lack of control. Those are not things that belong to us. And people tend to pick those up and take them on, like, oh, well, I don't want to go see my uncle because he stresses me out. He doesn't stress you out. There's stress in the room and you're picking it up and taking it on. And it's a good way for people who are energy workers to work on learning how to transmute energy, work on that alchemization, go in and be a breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively. Open the blinds, hold their hand, say something pleasant. Even if it's just a few minutes, put a couple of Cokes in their fridge, hand them a candy bar. Give them a good few moments. Allow yourself to feel the ick. Leave it on the floor there. Don't take it home with you. And it helps you learn how to process your living demons as well as the ones that are swirling around the room with them.
Right. And there's so many ways that you can connect, like music is one
Oh,
of the ways.
yeah. Yes.
Like my mum would tell me, like, and they actually had this specialist music group that came around, and they would sing all the songs from the 30s, 40s, 50s. And people who were sitting there who couldn't have told you who they were, who anyone else was, would start singing along to all the lyrics because
Absolutely.
it taps a part of our brain that nothing else is getting to.
Exactly. I tell my boys that all the time. Music touches a part of our brain that nothing else does. And
Yes.
I have seen clients who, are in full aphasia with, stage 7 or 8 dementia, and they can sing all the song, all the words to the Chiquita Banana song. They sing all of the words to a certain hymnal, even if they're not religious, they grew up in church singing it. And music for a lot, for the majority. I have seen some where noise of any kind agitates them, but so we go into scent or something different. But music, I mean, I've listened to Neil Diamond and Frank Sinatra and all sorts of people sing as their human let's go, and it puts them in that joyful place, the place when they were young and content, and reminds them of who they are, because joy is where we're going. We are love, and the place that we leave this world for is a place of joy. And when we're feeling joyful is when we listen to music most of the time. So it returns them to that same vibration. So they can just vibrate on out of here on, the lyrics of Frank Sinatra. And then
Okay,
there's
well, I don't know about Frank Sinatra, but I definitely want to vibrate out here on some music
right.
vibration.
Oh yeah, no,
Yes.
music is I tell people it's therapy. I have music going all the time. I have to have those positive high vibrations, and I will be someone who wants music at the end. I have but then I have clients who never cared for music. They don't like music. And I'm like, okay, death is going to be such an individual process for all of us, and we try to make the nesting area look like what makes them comfortable. And if that's quiet, or with a white noise machine, and if it's dark, or if it's bright, or if it smells great, or if it smells like patchouli, it's their choice. you know I try to
Okay.
be I try to be accommodating as much as possible. But yes, music it's transcendent. It helps us return to those vibrations that allow our soul to leave, because sometimes it is a struggle, especially where dementia is concerned, because the soul and the body are not communicating well. And the body's like, no, we're not supposed to be letting go. And the soul's like, let go, you know? So you watch this physical struggle happening, and the family is stressed and they think that the client is in distress. And I'm like, no, it's always these, determined little old ladies that just will not let go. And I'm like, no, they're ready. They just haven't figured it out yet. Like, just give them a minute. But
How long do you work with someone, averagely before they pass?
uh, it varies. The longest I've ever been with a client was 3 years, which was extraordinary. Typically a year, sometimes two. And I'm, very Libra nature. So it kind of works for me. Like, I get bored easily. I want to move on, and I think that that's kind of helped me. One of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how do you do it and not get so attached? And I'm like, because it's such a different attachment. I keep all of the things that I learn from these individuals, and it's like they're still here. They're part of my story. It's like I'm a transformer and I just snapped a piece of them on. I take them with me. I don't feel the grief the same. And again, that's something that I know my caregivers really struggle with, is letting go and feeling that sense of loss, where I don't feel the loss. I almost feel like it's a gain. Like, I've leveled up. I've learned how this type of soul needs to let go. I've learned, not to mix this oil with that one. From the mistakes to the good things, I feel like every time is just, I'm getting a little bit better and a little bit more information. And, knowledge is power. And the more knowledgeable you are, the less stressed you are. And the less stressed you are, the less stressed people are around you. And that's, it's kind of my MO. It's what I'm supposed to be doing.
I'm
So
just imagining when you pass, like your reception committee on the other side is going to be like Wembley Stadium. Everyone will be like,
I hope so. I feel it some days. It's isolating work. It's weird work. Everybody else talks about their office buddies, and I don't have that to relate to. And my kids will be like, don't tell me any more of your stories at dinner. And I'm fascinated by it all. I'm like, I think that it's so interesting. I was the weird kid who watched this serial killer documentaries and collected bones and bugs. I never harmed them, but I wanted to, and even now I keep a cabinet of curiosities that scares some of my son's friends. And I'm like, it's not macabre. I don't keep it because it's evil. I keep it because it's a beautiful memorial of something that lived a life. And that's all that's left of it. Like, it's so interesting to me. And that's what these families are. One of the questions I get is, how long do you stay with a family after their loved ones died? My very first family, I still text them every Mother's Day, and I have a client who passed 3 years ago, and her sons messaged me just yesterday. So I stay in touch with most of them continuously. Grieving is something that they're going to do forever. And I understand it because I lost my own parent, suddenly, and I understand that level of grief. And I lost grandparents due to dementia and disease, so I understand that, the grief that comes from that. And I'm constantly reading and learning, and I like giving information, like things that I find out. They're like, "Oh, you're so wise." No, I'm just constantly trying to figure everything out. When you sit with yourself and you're trying to sort all of these things out, the information is there for us to have. We just have to tap into it.
Right. And I'm sure that it's a great comfort to the families that they can reach out to you,
Oh, absolutely.
because you are that one constant, really.
Right.
You are that person who was with their loved one, probably providing something that they weren't capable of doing
Right.
before they passed, because I shouldn't think there are many of us who are equipped to do what you do for a loved one, because you have that
Right.
little bit of a degree of separation. It's not your loved
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah.
Um, so to be able to do that is tremendous, and so just to be able to reach out to you, I'm sure is very, very comforting to people.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and
The
to know
level
that
of
that loved one was treated with love and respect
yes.
on
Yeah.
the way out is huge.
Yes. That
Yeah.
that I genuinely care about every soul that I take care of. Even if, there are a few instances where I'm the favorite and there's a few instances where I'm not the favorite, but there's always respect and there's always that knowing that I see you on a soul level and I'm here. And, at the
Mhm.
very end, I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm the one holding their hand. Even though I'm not the snuggly bunny one, I'm the constant. I'm the comfort, I'm the anchor. The caregivers are usually crying in the next room or, holding family members as they should. That's the role of the doula. And until we, end up with more doulas, that's the caregivers for me are just, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without them. And so many people that I talk to who are like, "Oh, I'm interested in what you do because I'm nurturing and all of these things." I'm like, you sound like a caregiver. You should give me your number, um, because I can't find too many excellent people. Because when I get clients that I don't have the time to do anything besides, doula for, which it's a few hours a week usually, I place caregivers in those homes that I train and that I talk to constantly. Some days it seems, and they're learning right along with me. And I love my teams.
Yes. Okay, so if you had to tell everyone today something that might be a common misconception about the dying process, or something you just wish everyone knew about the dying process, what's the most common thing you just like, oh God, I wish everyone knew this, and then they wouldn't be so scared?
It's not painful. It is not a painful process. Our body's physiology has covered all of those bases for us. And so long as we have family members who listen to medical advice and listen to the doula and, don't force feed, don't force fluids, don't make them get up and get at the breakfast table, routine becomes such a focal point at this end. I've heard so many people that, they don't care how they're feeling this morning. They need to get up and get dressed and come eat breakfast. And I'm like, absolutely not. They're going to die whether they get up and eat breakfast or not. We need to come sit down and talk about this and talk about your expectations. But so many people tell me, as long as I knew it wasn't going to hurt, I wouldn't be afraid. It doesn't hurt. Our bodies set up um, hormone releases, chemical responses, and the dying process is typically euphoric. I have had very few instances where I felt like there was pain at the end, and there's always comfort meds for that. We will plan for all of those things. But dying is not a painful process. It's something our body is meant to do. It's something our body is supposed to do. And it's something that our body does whether we're ready for it or not. So the preparation is the most important. Stop avoiding it, is what I always tell people. We're trying to die well. If we look at every day, what we put in our mouth, the amount of exercise we get, the people that we talk to, the relationships that we build, we're trying to die well, live every day like you're dying. And it sounds simple and cliche because it is. But if we did that as a society, we would be completely different and our loved ones would be dying in our homes. and we wouldn't be afraid of it.
No, it'd be a whole lot different. Like you said, it is a cliche, but it's so hard to do sometimes. But it's so
Oh,
important to
I
just.
yeah.
But you know, when you said about the end of life, that is really exactly how I see it as a medium. Because
Yeah.
if someone will have been through, I mean, even if they're murdered or it's a traumatic passing, the way they show me their passing, they show me, they make me feel that their soul was wrapped in cotton wool.
Yes.
There is no pain. They show me no pain. I don't feel it. I was insulated from it. It's like my soul was removed from my body before this traumatic thing happened, or even it was there's just a feeling of insulation.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful feeling. They're in this state of peace and love. There
Yeah.
is no pain. They don't show me pain.
Yes. Because again, and I try to tell people all the time, the things that you feel in the room don't belong to you. Those things are human. And we're not humans. We forget that sometimes, we're being human. That's the role we're playing. And that's what our body's responses are. And, the overcoming the human emotions and the brain chemistry that makes our, brain a stew half the time is the challenge in itself. And at death, whether we're ready for it or not, whether we're enlightened and whether, we feel like we're done, our body's done. We get a second chance. And half the time, I feel like I get like a little soul high five on their way out. Like, okay, I get
Yes.
thing, I still have a lot to,
Yeah.
again, we all think that the dying are going to be so enlightened and have these words of wisdom. And occasionally they do. But I'll still have little old ladies that die fussing about the leaves on the ground and, oh, that curtain is crooked, or someone should do that. The things that don't matter, that are very human and very control oriented, they still get a fresh start. Their soul still detaches and they still leave their anger and pain and they still move on to the place of joy and love, just like all of us do. They just, their next go around will be a little bit different. So maybe towards the end, they're more in that phase of respite and that place of honor and sacredness that death is, and learn to go with the flow, tap into that divine feminine energy, because death is a woman, and so many of us fight that. We're going to control it and tell it what to do. And it's one woman that's not going to be told what to do. She's going to patiently sit there while you wear yourself out and throw your little tantrum, and then she'll walk you through the door.
Do you have an average age of your client? Are they all older, or is it just
Um,
very?
it's varied. It is on average older. My youngest client was 56. My oldest client was 94. Average is, mid 80s. I get them about the age where they just can't be left alone. They know they're dying. Usually they're cognizant. Family doesn't want them left alone. I put caregivers in the home. And I just talk to them once or twice a week. Again, I spend usually 24 hours per client a week, depending on how many clients I have, because sometimes that can turn into a lot of hours and a lot of days gone. So I try to limit it some, but I want to be very involved. You can't, it's hard to alchemize energy that you're not familiar with. And you have to really get to know these people, and they have to trust you. And in order to do that, you have to spend time with them.
When you say that, it reminds me, I'm just reading a book at the minute, and it's talking about this study, but what they're talking about is like, they can predict within the space of like a few seconds which doctor is going to get sued for malpractice based on the patient's response. And they said it is not the doctor that provides the best service.
Yeah.
The one who gets sued, like, could be the doctor that gave them the wrong advice. However, the doctor that doesn't get sued could have given them the wrong advice, but actually sat with them, was compassionate with them,
Yes.
and listen to them. So even if that doctor told them something that turned out to be quite catastrophically wrong, they're like, sue that doctor because they listened to me.
Yes.
They heard me.
Yeah.
They sue the doctor who just doesn't give a rat's behind what they just said.
Correct.
And so I think that's just, really part of what you do. You are listening, you are hearing, you are very present with that person. And that makes the absolute fundamental human difference.
Yeah. It does. And, I do have a little bit of an edge with medical terminology and background.
Mhm.
Um, so I know that not all people who want to start out dueling will be able to be the intermediary between doctors and nurses like I am, but it is a skill that you can build.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm working actually prompted against my will to try to figure out some type of curriculum to start teaching doulas to do doula work like I do, because we could cover so much more ground if we're doing a few clients at a time, and getting those caregivers well trained, and getting good caregivers well trained. There's so many people who are here to nurture and who are here to love through the ick and the ugly. And they come up to me all the time and they're like, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, and there's a few that I talk to, I'm like, oh, you'd be a perfect doula. We have that same almost like robot quality, the two, the two of us do. And I'm like, ah, perfect. You're compassionate, but able to disassociate. Where I have these, precious bleeding heart souls that come to me, and I'm like, this is what you're supposed to do. And, placing the caregiver with the soul that they're contracted to walk through this life, this last bit of life with. Because I do believe that we are contracted to a lot of these. And, we earn a good death. Sometimes, and we set these things up for ourselves. And I love it when I place a caregiver with someone who I'm like, this is a contract coming full circle. This is payback. This is you doing a service for a soul that you owed a favor to. And those connections happen all the time. And it's just, I would love for there to be more doulas where the families feel like everything's being taken care of. Because a lot of times I've had families that or friends who needed a doula, but they won't hire a doula. They're not going to pay someone extra, which I get it, because money makes the world go round. Unfortunately, we all work for money currently. And they won't hire someone who doesn't do everything. And it stinks that we kind of have to learn to do everything, but it feels like a second nature to me. I was raised in it. I did not have daughters, so I have not trained anyone else. I feel like I need to find people to train to do it this way, because I feel like because the way the economy is going, because the way our spiritual um, evolution is taking place, and because of just the way the world is thinking in a more holistic, nurturing way anyway, we need to get more doulas who can do just everything. One-stop shops, that's what I call myself. And
Yes.
we need more.
How do you find that the medical profession sees you, accepts you, supports
They
you?
they love me. I have never had my current client's neurologist called me 2-3 weeks ago. I was at coffee with the collective to see if she could give my number to someone, because she's like, having someone, again, talking to family members as a doctor, they're giving you all of the emotional feelings and all of this background that isn't necessarily relevant anymore, where I'm like, this is where we're at now. This is what we're dealing with now. And these are the symptoms as given to me by the caregivers who are in the house, not the children who, come by a week, a day or two a week. It's very different. And I can say it in a way that's educated and in a way that's kind and compassionate, but in a way that's very firm. Like I don't like to mess around. I always tell my clients when I start for them, I'm like, I'm an advocate for the dying. You're not going to always like me. I'm going to say things that are hard to hear sometimes, but I'm going to do my best to say in a kind way, but the caregivers are with me. You fire me, you lose them, so we're kind of a package deal. And I haven't run into that. I mean, so far every family that I've worked with has, any of our little tiffs, they've been very eager to be educated. They're like, tell me how I can make this feel better. They just want to feel better. They want to feel like they have some control. They want to feel educated and knowledgeable and make sure that they're doing the right thing. That's the children's big thing, especially when there's dementia involved. They just want to do the right thing. And that's what I'm here for. I'm going to make sure you're doing the right thing and not speaking from a place of just emotion, but also not just medicine, you know.
I would imagine that it's very helpful when you're working with a client and they have, children, siblings. So if you've got like 3 or 4 kids and they may not agree on the direction that the medical care should take for their parent who's dying,
Yeah.
um, And a doctor is probably going to be giving you options, and be like, well, it could be this. And let's face it, doctors don't really want to say you're dying. I mean, like, they want to
Right.
come up with a care plan, or we could prolong it. And so for you, I would imagine, as a death doula coming in, perhaps you can help ease some of those situations between the
Yeah.
siblings, to just be
Take
like,
responsibility.
yeah, your mum really is going, this is what we can do, and this is the best course of care. And maybe they can, just kind of get on board with that before their mum passes, because, sometimes things fall apart after a parent passes.
Right. Yes.
Maybe you
My
can help with that. I'm sure
Yes,
you.
my current family actually is a very sticky situation. Lots of trauma in the sibling group and lots of big personalities. All of them are like the firstborn child. I tease them about that. I'm like, dude, I get it. My kids are going to be jerks when I'm dying too, and I'm glad for it. But right now, I just want to wring all of your necks. So we've had to have several major powwows where we sit down and I have to remind them who I am and why I'm here. I'm not the villain. I'm not the bad guy. I'm not killing your mother. Her disease is, and lay them out baseline activity. And this is what we're looking for. And this is what we're trying to get back. So, yes, the fact that I have medical knowledge and understand the lingo helps tremendously where that is concerned, where medicine is concerned specifically. And that's one thing that doulas don't usually do. You normally end up having to hire a nurse advocate, which that's
Mhm.
another expense. So, and again, I always tell them I am not licensed to give you any information. I have experience, lots of experience. And, the fact that the doctors and the nurses always have my back.
Mhm.
They usually say what I say after I've said it. And because it's what I do, I've done it for so long and I do several clients at a time usually. Um, and I'm here to make sure that the client passes as well as possible. Doing well doesn't mean you're not dying. We want to die well. And that's what I try to make sure the family understands. We want to die well. We want to die as lucid as possible. We want, them to be cognizant and feeling the best they're able to feel, but also manage your expectations and let go, because that's, they take on all of that responsibility and think, well, if I put my mom on hospice, she's going to die, because people on hospice die. And it's kind of one of those things where statistics are a bitch at times, because, statistically speaking, people are more likely to die of a shark attack if they eat an ice cream cone. But it's because most people, are on the beach and it's summertime. It has nothing to do with the sharks know that there's ice cream. Your loved one is not going to die because they're on hospice. They're on hospice because they're dying. And statistically, you're more likely to live a longer time on hospice and with excellent caregivers. You're more likely to have a great quality of life. And that's the goal. We want people to be able to die in their home and to do it reasonably affordably and be kind of that one-stop shop for everything, where they don't need a nursing advocate, they don't need a death doula, and they don't need a care team. They just need someone who does everything. And that's why I try to be everything. But right now, so far as I know, I'm the only one who does it that way. But
Right.
I do definitely want to work towards creating more. I need to
Yeah,
clone me.
they do.
Yeah,
Okay, I know we've covered a lot of the things I was going to ask you about. I've got a couple of things I definitely want to ask you about.
go ahead.
Um, so if they couldn't get hold of a death doula where they are, or there just isn't one, or they couldn't afford one, what are ways that they could be kind of take on a little bit of a role of a death doula for their loved one at home? What could they do for their loved
One
one?
of the things that they can do is tap into hospice services. Hospice services are usually covered by Medicare and their insurance. Even people on Sooner Care end up with a hospice care team. Hospice offers lots of pamphlets and books. Um, I can give a list of books for people to read that talk about how to create a sacred space, how to, ground and center and cleanse spaces, how to be there. And again, that association and comfort while disassociating and not taking on the emotions that don't belong to us. There's a lot of things that people can do. And honestly, they already know how to do them. It's just hard. And that's, people think that just because it's hard, it's bad. It's like, no, it's supposed to be hard. You're not doing it wrong just because it's hard. Sometimes the situation is just difficult. And, the growth is in the struggle, and you're learning and growing just like they are. And they can grow and learn right up until the moment they let go. And that's okay.
Mhm. Yes. Perfect. Do you, and I know a lot of times people talk about this, and I see it as a medium that they will have souls from the other side in the room
Yes.
before they pass.
100.
They show it to me like it's like a double layer. They show me
Yeah.
like the actual physically alive people in their family or their friends like in the room when they pass, but then they also show me the layer, the
Yeah.
people behind them on the other side who are there as a
Yes.
welcome. So do you experience that in your work?
100%. And it's funny because it starts soon. They start gathering and kind of pacing early. And it scares my caregivers at first, because they grew up watching scary movies and they think everything in the house is a demon. I'm like, no, it's her dad.
Right.
Relax. It's her dad's energy. Her dad is a guide. And, my current client, one of her lead guides was her oldest sister, and she sees her in the house all the time. And one of my caregivers heard them talking the other day, and I'm like, let her talk. I'm like, that's so that when she is ready to leave, and her body, because she's a tiny, feisty little thing, and her body is fighting, she has someone there to help orient her soul and help remind her that this is the facade, that the soul is what's real, and that she can let go of the shell and let go of the attachments to the children that are going to be standing there, that the attachments from this human aspect are so small and so insignificant that those children that she birthed are soul connections that she'll see in a minute.
Right.
She left them for the moment and she'll be fine. And them losing her, I say losing, we don't lose anyone. They go to the other side. We just don't see them. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not here. But them having to let her go is part of their soul's process and part of their soul's growth. And they're going to learn how to transmute that for their good or for their not good. Um, Everything is a learning process. Watching someone die, we always learn something. And those children are there to learn. And it's hard. I can't imagine, as a mother, being able to tear yourself away from that and look at your children as souls. I can do it occasionally. There's a few times a week where I have clarity and I remember, that I'm not here to control them or have expectations. I'm just here to nurture them and guide them. But the rest of the time, I'm mom, you know. And so it's one of those things that, we have to learn little by little and let them do it. And they have all of that encouragement because it is a difficult task, but it is their task to complete. And it just requires a little bit of, a cheering on. They need a little bit of a fan club to remind them that this is.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. And just to have that, it's just like they're separating from here, but it's like they're there to meet them.
Yeah,
It's like a hand,
it is.
you're not
Yeah,
swinging the trapeze hoping something's going to catch you on the other
right.
side. They're here to pick you up.
Yeah. I run into that all the time. They're like, well, what if the soul gets lost? I'm like, you don't have any idea how powerful a soul is. We don't get lost. We have guidance with us all the time. We know exactly where we're going. This confusion is very human. The feeling of where am I going and what am I doing and where's my navigation again? That's a human thing. On the soul
Right.
side, we know exactly what we're doing. We are so much more badass on that side. We don't require nearly all of this coaxing and coddling. Like, so people are like, oh, well, what if their
I mean,
soul gets lost? I'm like, that's not possible. It can't be.
I
Like
think
they know right where they're going.
living human life is the hard part. We are doing the hard part.
100%.
That is not the hard
Yeah,
part.
no, 100%. Trying to live in an enlightened life for more than 5 minutes in a day-to-day basis is the trick. It's why we're here. We are here to learn how to break free from these human emotions that stack on us from birth and from the programming that we get from birth that we set up for ourselves. We're like, oh, I want to be born into this specific family. And my challenge will to be here by the time I'm 20. Well, I didn't make it to 20. I was 32, but I'm, like I'm still trying to sort my own game. And part of my game is to help guide other people and to nurture their family. And because this new age and, economy is just a construct of man that is mirroring what's happening in our spiritual world. So while other people are like, well, the economy is shifting, everything is shifting. Everything is shifting. So of course, money has to shift with it. We're going to have to bring our people home to die. We are going to have people who are trained to not only train caregivers and to be the voice of reason, but to know, the legal issues that we have as humans and the disentanglements and the soul disentanglements. And that's why doula is becoming a much more frequently used word, even though it's followed up by what exactly is that? It used to be, oh, death doula, what's that? Now it's like, oh, I've heard of that. What exactly is it that you do? And I can be like, let me tell you. I feel like I'm proselytizing all the time. And I need to get some type of curriculum up. Like, I feel like there's an army rising. I can feel it stirring. They just need some guidance. We all just need
do,
to,
and
we just need a
I've
direction.
sent some, yeah, and I've sent some people your way because I've talked about people like, oh, I'm interested.
Yeah.
And and a couple of them have actually trained in like to be a funeral director or some kind of
Oh,
funeral, because,
yeah.
and I think it's just my guess here that they were drawn to it, they trained, but then they're like, it's too narrow a
Right.
perspective. I want something that's more rounded and that
Right.
also is the soul. And so then they may be very well drawn to you. But I'm
Yeah.
going to include your links again so that people can reach out to you
Oh,
with
absolutely.
their questions and and to ask like, wow, I'm really interested in what you do. How would I go about doing that?
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I just think that's amazing. So if you had any last words for everyone, Becca, what would they be?
Just, we're all dying. Embrace it. Stop running from it. Stop hiding from it. Allow yourself to sit and picture what that room looks like, because the bed is comfortable and all of your favorite stuff is in it.
Yeah.
It's not as scary as we think, and it's not painful.
And I would just say, just go and do something today that you've been putting off, that you want to do.
Absolutely.
When
Yes.
you're laying on that deathbed, you're going to be glad you did it.
Yeah. 100%. Live every day like you're dying, good and bad. Take care of yourself, yes, but also, eat the piece of cake if you really want to. I have seen in my work, there is no difference between those who are holistic and gluten-free and those who eat bacon every day. We all die the same, usually at the same age. It doesn't really matter. What matters is how you feel and how you act and how loving you are.
Yeah. Yay. Thank you so much for being here
You're so
today.
welcome. It's good to see you.
So much. Kelly has said that it fascinates her, and you were obviously created to do this work. And I
Yes,
would
I
absolutely agree with
believe
that.
so. I believe it's why I'm here. It's what I do. And again, I do
Yes.
mystery, so I know it's like a multi-life thing. It's part of who I am. I just have to actually start getting outside and teaching other people how to do it, because
Right?
we're going to need so many more. We need to build an army.
Yes.
And
Well,
there's
if
so
there was
many people
anyone,
started, they just don't know it yet.
I know. Well, if there was anyone qualified to lead that army, and I can just picture you on a horse right now, like, Knight of Wands, you're like waving the.
Oh my goodness, it's funny.
It's you. So I feel very confident that you can do this.
Yay.
And you will find people to follow you with this work. And as you said, it is very, very needed. And
It is.
um,
Yeah,
yes.
I feel a wave coming.
Yes, and I don't know about everyone else, and well, I'm probably a bit weird anyway, but the thought of having a death doula, like in my last moments, very comforting. Very,
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
100%. Yeah, some goober or your kid, you know, or a nurse who you're their fourth patient of the day, and bless the nurses. I have no
Right.
disrespect at all, but someone who that's what they do, just
Yeah.
like with birth, they know you. It's not like they just showed up that day,
Yeah.
you
They're
know.
like, what's your name again? Oh,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they know you, they're invested in you, and they're like I'm here for it. I have that connection.
yes. Perfect. But thank you so much for doing this,
Well,
Becca. I'm going
thanks for having me.
to everyone. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I hope I get to see you soon. So,
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
yay, I'm just gonna hit that. Okay, so I think that has ended. Let me just turn off the